Part 4. The Power of Invincible Thinking. 1. A theory that links self-reflection and progress. At our institute, I introduced the fourfold path: love, wisdom, self-reflection and progress as principles of happiness. The theme of this book, Invincible Thinking, is a philosophy that links self-reflection and progress. Generally, when people practice positive thinking, they tend to think it is sufficient simply to move forward in a positive and constructive manner. However, we need to consider how to reconcile this with self reflection, one of the basic teachings of the Institute for Research in Human Happiness. If people are told to reflect on their thoughts and deeds one day and urged to move forward using positive thinking the next, some will waver between the two, not knowing which one to concentrate upon. Until now, I have left it up to the individual to decide which method to adopt, and this may have caused some confusion. For this reason, I have introduced the idea of invincible thinking as a way of connecting these two ideas and making the theory clearer. I would like you to use invincible thinking when you have no idea how to solve a problem, because it is an effective philosophy that includes both self reflection and progress. When practicing positive thinking, people tend not to look into the shadows, not to look at the dark side of things. They only look to the light, focusing on to the bright side of things, or look at things only in a constructive way. While this philosophy is very powerful, if you focus only on the direction, it leaves no room for self-reflection. But no matter how positive and forward-looking you may be, there are times when things do not smoothly go. I am sure you have experienced failure in the past. Is it really all the right on such occasions to ignore it and advance regardless? You have probably told yourself that everything would be all right as long as you kept on moving forward, as long as you maintained a positive attitude. Even if you fell or made mistakes, you probably said, "I don't worry about things like this, I just remain in the light." After all, a person's nature is essentially light. Those who practice positive thinking tend to think like this, but is this really all that there is to life? Are people's feeling really that simple? Having studied the hearts and minds of human beings, I was forced to ask myself if this really was enough. Is it sufficient for people to advance in just one direction, following just one pattern of thinking? No, of course not. People's hearts and minds are full of deep feelings and thoughts, so surely there needs to be a deep philosophy to take account of this. Number 2. The power of invincible thinking in the phenomenal world. Invincible thinking is a personal philosophy unique to each and every individual. Despite this, I strongly feel that I need to offer an explanation of the direction and approach you should take. So here I would like to discuss the power of invincible thinking from this perspective. The philosophy started from the idea that no one can live without making mistakes. No one is capable of sailing through life without any problems. The reality is that people move to the left, then to the right, they fail and go down, then they stand up again, but always they are searching for some way to make their lives better and happier. In the face of this reality, what is needed to lead a successful life? This is what I would like to consider now. Invincible thinking is a philosophy that provides you with the greatest power that exists in the three-dimensional world you inhabit. This world where you breathe and eat. Of course, there are principles that go beyond the three-dimensional world. For instance, one of the laws of self-realization is the law of will. In the real world, you can manifest almost 100% of your innate power, but this is not necessarily the case in this three-dimensional world. Each person is capable of manifesting to a different extent. The monism of light, which states there is essentially only light, becomes more effective in higher dimensions, but here in the three-dimensional world, it does not necessarily apply. Invincible thinking explains spiritual laws that are not fully understood, especially from the standpoint of this phenomenal world. Number 3. Transform difficulties into strength for your soul. I would like to start by saying that invincible thinking is based on the idea that all difficulties in life can be turned into nourishment for the soul. You will probably face various setbacks, failures, and difficulties during the course of your life, but seen from the perspective of your purpose in coming to this world, should you simply try to avoid them? This is something that I would like you to think about. Were you really born just to avoid the difficulties and hardships that arise? This is a question you must answer. When you think about the meaning of life, you will realize it is not the case. You are born here on this earth once every few hundred or few thousand years so that you make work with many types of people in new circumstances to refine your soul further. Life on this earth is not necessarily filled with good experiences, but before you were born, you all knew this. You are not here simply to have everything run smoothly for you. Your purpose on earth is to develop greater stature and radiate a genuine light by accumulating many different experiences, repeating the process of trial and error. If you look at the purpose of your life in this way, what you thought of as difficulties and hardships will take on a new meaning. The realization is the basis of invincible thinking. If you base your thinking on the fact that human beings have eternal life and return to earth repeatedly through the process of reincarnation, you will be able to look at all the events and experiences of this phenomenal world from a different perspective and see that these experiences are provided to supply your inner being with invaluable nourishment. This is basis of invincible thinking. The main challenge in life is how to make the utmost effort using all the knowledge, skills and ideas you possess to cope with the problems you are confronted with and transform what you gain into strength for your soul. So never be satisfied simply to avoid or deny a problem. This is expressed in teaching of our institute that states, life is like a workbook of problems to be solved and one must make the effort to solve each problem. You have your own workbook of problems to be solved and you have to answer them all by yourself. This is something I want you to think of as a prerequisite for learning invincible thinking. You must solve your own problems yourself, and once you have done so, or even while you are in the throes of doing so, think about guiding others. Then, do not be satisfied just to help others, but also work to establish some large positive undertaking. This is the framework of invincible thinking. Number 4. Be master of your own time. I would now like to look at the sort of thinking that is important if you are to gain real power from invincible thinking. Basically, it could be summed up as having an indomitable spirit. Since founding the Institute for Research in Human Happiness, I have come into contact with a large number of people and heard about many different ways of thinking. Some people seem to live in the light, others in the dark, some are buoyant, others depressed, and all seem to be going through a variety of small personal dramas. As a result of coming into contact with the activities of our institute, many were able to change their lives. In the course of a life, people experience many different periods of life, light and dark, of happiness and depressions, times when things go their way and times when they do not. If people were to be observed in such circumstances and classified according to the way they reacted, everyone would fall into one of the following two groups. One type is the people who do extremely well when things are going their way, when they have a trial wind and everything seems to be worked out for them. But as soon as they run into a headwind, they cannot cope. Although they sail swiftly along when they have a good wind in their sails, as soon as the wind swings round and changes direction, they find they cannot move forward. Some of them even capsize. The vast number of people fit into this category. The other type is the people who have an indomitable spirit. They demonstrate a strong, pure will that was with them from the outset, and they constantly show a tenacity. A person's will can be very powerful at certain times, but whether or not it is genuine is tested by the passage of time. Invincible thinking is a philosophy that allows you to be master of your own time and to keep time under your control. To see whether you have assimilated this philosophy, you need to think back to how you were 6 months ago, for instance, or a year or two, or 3 years ago. Looking at what you have achieved in this time, have you gone forward or backwards, strayed or continued on the right path? You always need to check on your own course in this way. If you look back over the path you have been taking and find you have made progress on a single steady path, it means that although you may have suffered losses in some small instances, on the whole you have continued to win the big match. So invincible thinking is like growth of a tree. As it grows, a tree is faced with numerous challenges and hardships. Strong winds may blow and strip the branches of their leaves. The trees may come close to dying. It may lack nourishment or its roots may be exposed. However, no matter what happens, it struggles to keep growing even taller. Invincible thinking is based on this kind of effort. Number 5. The energy of bamboo that creates joints. To use a different metaphor, I would like you to think about bamboo. Perhaps you have admired the bamboo plant when you have seen it growing and looking at a stem, its joints tapering to the top. You probably thought of the joints simply as a kind of pattern. However, when I look at it, I wonder what makes bamboo put so much effort into creating joints. The joints of bamboo occur at intervals of 8 to 12 inches and each joint is very strong. At the base, the joints are bigger and stronger and they become increasingly smaller and weaker towards the top, bending in the wind. However, over time, the thin, weak parts grow stronger to become large joints, and the top grows still higher. If you look at bamboo, you can see it grow steadily, segment by segment. I find it very impressive. Whether it grows to a height of 30 feet or 60 feet, what makes it unique and the reason that bamboo is its joints. Bamboo is resistant to wind. No matter how strong the wind, bamboo will not break easily. It is not a strong plant, but you can tell that it is certainly not weak either by the fact that it is so resilient. The wind may blow, the rain may fall, but it just keeps on growing regardless. It marks the growth on its stem for you to see, as if saying, "This is how much I have grown." I have pondered how the bamboo must feel as it creates these joints. As each one is added, it must think to itself, "I have managed to grow this much taller, and I'm sure this must give it a sense of accomplishment." The way in which you construct your life in many ways resembles the bamboo. You are just like the bamboo which remains thin. Even the biggest bamboo stalk is only 8 to 10 inches across. They cannot grow any bigger. The bamboo first appears above the ground as a shoot. Then it grows steadily. It does not lose its initial flexibility, neither does it lose its strength. Flexibility and strength exist together in harmony, and this is what is needed for growth. In other words, what I call invincible thinking is a philosophy that allows you to grow through both the good and the bad times in life, and in this, it is like the growth of the bamboo. Basically, bamboo is flexible yet strong. It is not sufficient for it to be able to bend in just one direction or not bend at all. Persimmon trees do not sway or bend like bamboo, and they break quite easily. Bamboo does not snap, but persimmon trees do. As you know, willows do not break easily either. Sometimes that looks sturdy can actually be quite weak and snap easily. However, what is flexible has the real strength within and is hard to break. This is what you should aim for, because the three-dimensional world in which you are living is not some kind of greenhouse. It is a world where rain falls, wind blows, and there are snow storms and periods of drought. I have used bamboo as a metaphor, but come to think of it, both your life and fate seems to go in cycles. I cannot say how long each cycle lasts. It may be several years or several months, but one thing is certain: there are times when everything goes well and times when things do not run smoothly. I believe that it is in times of adversity that what is truly wonderful is born. At the turning points in your life, inevitably you experience a lack of harmony with your environment and the people around you, and you suffer. But if I were asked whether it would be better for you not to have to go through these times, I would have to say no, because these times of hardships are when marvelous things begin. Look at life in this way. You will realize that there is no need to fear adversity. In times of adversity, your soul receives the greatest nourishment and you are able to learn the most important lessons. This can be likened to the time when bamboo makes a new joint. It grows 8 to 12 inches steadily until it reaches the point where it needs to create a joint. I imagine this must be a painful time for the bamboo. It probably wishes it could just continue growing smoothly in the same way it has been up to that time without making a joint. It may dream of how wonderful it would be to grow 30 or even 60 feet without interruption. However, it has to stop every 8 to 12 inches to create a joint. I am sure it must experience a feeling of resistance and stagnation when this happens. It must wonder why it is no longer able to grow as it pleases, why it has to suffer such an interruption. It must be a painful time for the bamboo because although it wants to continue growing, it has to produce a joint. I imagine it suffers confusion, feeling as if it has come up against a barrier. But soon the energy wells up inside and the joint is created. Once the joint is formed, the bamboo can grow normally again until it is time to make another one. The process of creating these joints may be very painful for the plant, but it is on account of this that it is able to keep growing continuously, although it may not realize it. The joints provide the basis for this growth. What it comes down to is that fate and luck run in cycles. There are times when things go well and times when nothing works out, times of opportunity and times of adversity, which are the periods when you grow and produce joints. Times of adversity are the joints in your life, and after you have created a joint, you can advance to the next step. I would like you to look back over your past and consider when you were able to learn most. I am sure that you have suffered at some time. You may have been hurt by the words of others. You may have had difficulties in business, gone bankrupt, or suffered illness. However, after an interval of 5 or 10 years, looking back on these experiences, you realize that there were the times that provided you with your sweetest memories. So, when you find life unbearable, tell yourself that you are in the middle of creating a joint before you move forward to the next stage on the path of growth. Number 6. Creating annual rings in a harsh environment. In the last section, I used the growth of bamboo as a metaphor for life, but an ordinary tree would serve just as well. Unlike bamboo, trees do not have joints, but they do have annual rings. When I lived in the country, I built an I built an incinerator for burning rubbish. It was a simple affair of bricks and stones to keep the fire from spreading. Standing nearby was a tree, and I thought the heat of the fire would kill it. However, contrary to my expectation, it did not. In fact, it became much tougher than before, and although other trees died, this one continued to grow. Life must have been harsh for that tree growing right next to the incinerator, but its growth during that period was marked by annual rings. Its trunk grew progressively thicker and it was full of life force. Strangely enough, I saw trees that were growing in more hospitable places and were quickly blown over in the typhoons. If we compare this to human life, it could be said that the other trees were like the so-called elite who works for the large corporations. They come from wealthy backgrounds and have lived their whole life without ever experiencing hardship. But as soon as a gale blows, this is to say, as soon as they suffer some setback in their career, they are unable to withstand the pressure. On the other hand, those who have been brought up in tough conditions and who possess a strength that has been forged by hardships do not give in so easily. Strong in the face of adversity, they are able to get through any difficulty, and so they are able to overcome all kind of obstacles, marking up annual rings in their character to increase their stature. If you read the biographies of great people, you will notice that in many cases they have lived through hard times. This illustrates how, without experiencing such adverse conditions, they would not have been able to mark the annual rings on their souls. So, it is vital to endure difficult situations in the course of life. As for myself, I am able to stand before people and give them advice on life problems because I too have lived through some difficult times. What I have given thought to in this period has been converted into strength. When your body and soul are faced with the buffeting winds of misfortune and the heat and snow of tribulations, your soul develops the power to resist any misfortune, and it is like an immunity. As a result, you come to understand how to overcome life's problems. Once you have this expertise, you are able to check new knowledge and others' experience against your own and come up with new ideas. In the end, every experience you have accumulated becomes a lesson which is converted into a powerful energy for your soul. Number 7. Think like a long distance runner. So far, this part of the book has been about indomitable spirit, and now I would like to consider a relatable subject: short term and long term thinking. There are two ways of considering a situation: in short term and in long term. You should not consider things only in long term and deem the present unimportant. It is not good to say, I will stock up on provisions in winter so I can do whatever I want now. Although it may be summer, there are still things to do. You should not pass the time of the days indolently, thinking just because you have laid in enough wood and coal to see you through the winter, you have nothing more to worry about. You must do all that is necessary in each season. However, just when you feel like giving up and think that things could not possibly get worse, that you could not endure any further hardship or privation, I would like you to bear in mind that such periods in your life are generally very brief. If you focus on just 1 or 2 short years, you may feel depressed that things have not gone as you would have liked. But at such times, you need to change your way of thinking completely. The fact that you did not succeed in short term may mean that you do not have the potential to be a sprinter. You may not be able to win the 100-yard dash, but this does not necessarily mean that you do not have any ability to be a runner. There are the sprints over a few 100 yards, and there are marathons which last 26 miles. If you are no good at sprinting, then ask yourself whether you have any talent for long distance running. Sometimes I would like you to change your perspective. I myself have never been a very good runner, but when I was in senior high school, I once took part in marathon and achieved quite a satisfactory position. This experience of long distance running taught me the importance of pacing myself in all things. When the race started, I chose a group of people who I felt were of about the same ability as me, and I ran with them to pace myself. However, after I had been running for a while, my body warmed up, I felt good and realized that I might be able to do better than I had originally expected. From about the halfway point, I began to increase my pace, and it felt as if my legs had grown longer. I was able to continue increasing my speed until I found myself overtaking people who had always beaten me in the sprints. Sprinters are usually well built, and if they get the pace wrong in a long distance race, they find that they cannot keep going. If they run too fast, they drop out halfway, panting and pausing for rest. I could see the amazement on the sprinters' faces as I overtook them, and although they made an effort to stay ahead, they could not keep up and dropped behind. I could hardly believe it was happening. It was indeed an amazing experience. I have talked here about the importance of pacing yourself. You need to assess your own strengths objectively and decide when you should make extra effort so that you achieve the best possible result in the long run. There is always room for improvement. Number 8. The cumulative effect. I imagine that for some of the members of our institute, studying the truth is a real headache. Perhaps they worry that they do not have time to study the books of truth, or they have difficulty learning at seminars. If you look only at the short term, it is truer that people have different levels of ability. For instance, if a group of people is asked to master something over the course of a year, some people will manage this much faster than the others. However, the objective is not to achieve a high level of awareness in a single year, not to leave this world within 1 year. The challenge is how much nourishment you can acquire for your soul in this lifetime, how much you are able to improve your character before you return to the real world. If you rush in and try to achieve something in short term, there is a good chance you will not succeed. However, if you look at the long term, you will realize that there are many other ways of thinking about things. It is pointless to cut time into 1 year segments so as to measure someone's achievements or ability. It may not even be enough to limit a segment to 3 or 4 years. It is necessary to extend the time frame. If some people tire of a subject after a year or two and give up, you should tell yourself you will continue studying longer. This is how you should change your thinking. If you do this, you will be thinking like a long distance runner, and gradually you will see positive results. Strangely enough, contrary to expectations, you will find yourself achieving results very quickly, almost as if you were a sprinter. The reason you are able to do this is the result of cumulative effect and accumulative effect. Although you may not possess any particular ability and curse yourself for your slowness, if you continue to make an effort, you will find that a cumulative effect will begin to work. After you have attained a certain degree of discipline and accumulated a certain stock of knowledge, you will find that what used to take a long time in past can be achieved ever more speedily. It seems strange, but this is the way it works. If you mix yeast and rice and leave them to stand, they will ferment to produce sake. In the same way, if you store experiences, you will find that after a certain period of time, they come to fruition. This will happen when you least expect it and provide the power of propel you forward. However, I should warn you that this fermentation takes a number of years to occur. A similar effect can be seen in many foods and drinks. Some have to be stored for several years before their true value can be appreciated. Wine is a prime example of this. The value of some bottles appreciated according to the number of years they have been allowed to stand. Dried bonito is very much the same. If you want to eat the fish itself, then of course it is best fresh. But fresh fish is no good for the dried version. First the fish is dried, then it is left to allow mold to grow. This mold greatly adds to the taste, so it has to be left for a long time in order for it to reach its final flavor. There are things that have been stored for a certain period of time which suddenly one day change into something entirely. To take another example, there are two kinds of students who do well in school exams. One type reads the textbooks from cover to cover, from preface to postscript without missing a single word. The other type simply picks out important points and memorizes them, knowing which section of the book are likely to appear in the test, and gives the other parts only a cursory glance. In the short term, the latter technique is effective, allowing the student to take in the main points in a very short time. On the other hand, for those who go over their work numerous times to deepen their understanding, it will take a long time before their studies yield results. But after several years of underground effort, they will achieve remarkable results because they have become used to thinking deeply. This type of person, one who makes underground efforts over a period of time to achieve an ambition, is not necessarily very clever. If they were to stop partway through and look at what they have achieved, they might think that they were slow learners with no potential to do well. If they were to stop halfway through, they would not achieve anything. So they must never give up. If they do not give up, although they may still be underwater, eventually they will break through the surface. What makes them keep going is willpower. They need to keep telling themselves that they are not permanently submerged, and when they eventually surface, they will find that they have advanced a long way towards their goal. This is true of education in general. Of those who have children in school, there are parents who look at their children's short-term scholastic record in primary or junior high school and conclude whether or not their children are doing well. However, there is something they need to know. If the children concentrate only on the main points of their lessons and quickly go on to study ahead of time what is going to be taught the following term, they will often get good marks. This type of child, however, is not necessarily going to be successful in life. Children who study ahead of the rest of their class are soon able to grasp what the teacher says and answer any question put to them. At first glance, they appear to be very intelligent, but in a way, they can be likened to people who do all their shopping with a credit card. They do not have any cash, so they charge everything up to their card and pay off their debts when they receive their wages or bonus. They buy all kinds of things but are always in debt. It is true that people who get information ahead of time will do well in short term. In the same way, those who choose the main points of a lesson and study only this will get good marks if what they have studied appears in the test. These are common strategies, and actually these people often get to savor the fruits of success. However, what I want to stress is that it is not certain that they possess real strength that will help them in their lives. If they are blessed with a good partner and working environment, they will do well. They will succeed in their career. However, the outcome is very variable depending on the combination of their partner and the environment. So, to a great extent, their success depends on luck. On the other hand, there are others whose succeed does not depend on luck. No matter what kind of environment they find themselves in, no matter who they have to work with, they are able to produce consistent results. This is due to the cumulative effect I spoke of earlier. Of the knowledge you have accumulated, there may be some which is not strictly necessary for life. This can be referred to as unnecessary necessity. In the same way, there is information taught at school that does not appear in exams. However, someone who has steadfastly studied everything will be able to exhibit the same effectiveness no matter what the situation he or she is faced with. This is kind of person who will gradually develop great stature. To sum up, you should not try to simply pick up the gist of a subject. In the short term, it may seem to provide a quick route to success, but in long term, it will not necessarily lead you to true victory. Number 9. Prepare for the next step instead of waiting on luck. This is equally true in business. If you are involved with retail, you will know that it is relatively simple to achieve a short-term profit. For instance, you can sell something no one else does, offer free gifts, or bring out a new product. There are a number of ways to make a profit in a short term. A product might become very popular for a limited period, but in the long term, this popularity will not last. A high-selling product is capable of earning a lot of money in a very short time, but this kind of business always attracts rivals. There will be people who copy your business and as more rivals appear, business will gradually taper off. It might be good for a while, but as more competitors come into the market, your profits will go down. Let us say you build a hotel in the center of town. In the hotel business, if the working ratio, that is the number of rooms that are filled, exceeds 80%, rival companies will move into market. If you manage to fill more than 80% of your rooms, it means that there is a demand and other hotel chains will open their own establishments nearby. As a result, although you may have been very busy, as soon as a new hotel opens nearby, you will find the business suddenly drop off. On the other hand, it lessens than 70% of the rooms are filled, the operation will not be profitable. If you fill less than 70% of your rooms, you will be in the red, whereas if you fill more than 80%, you will attract rivals. So you have to try and keep the number of guests somewhere between 70 and 80% of capacity. Suppose you find a good site where there are no other hotels and think to yourself, this is a good location. If I were to build here, I would be sure to make a profit. You go ahead with the project and true to your initial forecast, you make a lot of money. However, while you are busy congratulating yourself, a rival moves in and takes away your customers. If you are relying solely on the novelty value to make a profit, your business will not last. It will soon go into decline. It is good to try to launch new businesses that no one else has tried, but when you reach a certain level of success, there is something you need to bear in mind. In the case of hotel management, it is important to ensure that the same guests keep coming back. You must provide services and facilities that will make the people who have stayed once want to come back again and again. You should not want them to return just because there are no other hotels in the neighborhood. Even if you are able to make a big profit in this way, the number of guests will gradually decrease. It is vital that you offer the kind of service that will induce them to return. If there are no other hotels in the neighborhood, you will be able to fill 80 or 90% of your rooms whether you offer good service or not. But eventually, a competitor will appear and your true potential will be revealed. If the competitor offers better service, you will find that they take all your customers and you will soon go out of business. Sometimes events happen that at first glance appear to be most propitious, convenient, or the answer to your prayers. Actually, they happen more often than you may think, but you should not depend on them. When these things do happen, it is quite alright for you to accept them, but when you do, you must start preparing for the next step. No matter whether the environment is good or bad, the economy buoyant or depressed, as the base you need to have an attitude of trying to offer a good product or service which will allow you to maintain a steady batting average. This may sound a little dull, but it is a very important attitude that I hope you will apply. Number 10. When conditions are favorable, sow the seeds of love. So far, I have concentrated on adversity, but the good times are also important. When things are going well and everything succeeds in exactly the way you had hoped, you will probably feel that invincible thinking is no longer necessary. You may think to yourself, everything is going according to plan, everything is working out, I have no further problems. But this is when you need to look out for hidden pitfalls. The good times and bad times should be regarded in the following way. Hardship is a time when you are presented with many opportunities to look carefully at yourself. You may have an awful lot of time to think about yourself. You become introspective and you are able to look deeply into your own character. Times of hardships are times of training. So, what should you do when you think things are going well? The good times are when you should practice giving love. You should not be concerned solely with benefiting yourself. Instead, make an investment in the spiritual sense, an investment in the laws of truth. In other words, you must give love to others. I am not talking about profit or loss, but the more seeds of love you sow in the good times, the easier your life will be when you are faced with adversity. When things are going badly, whether or not people offer to help you will depend on how many seeds of love you are able to sow when you are doing well. To put it simply, when you are in trouble, do not stint on strengthening yourselves, and when times are good, sow the seeds of love. Tell yourself, this is the time you must practice the love that gives. This sounds like a very simple philosophy, but it is in fact the way of sustained success. However, when faced with adversity, people tend to crave what they do not have. They bemoan their bad luck or misfortune and try to rely on others to help them. When things improve, they become filled with pride and believe that their success was achieved entirely through their own efforts. They become arrogant and their friends give up on them. This kind of person does all right when things are running smoothly, but as soon as the going gets tough, they collapse and find there is no one around to help. When you look back over your past, have there been times when no one offered you advice until you were faced with some danger or crisis? If you had this kind of experience, it is probably because you were too proud while things were going well. People who become too proud and obsessed with themselves, who think it only their due to be loved by others and to be center of attention, will find that no one offers them advice until they have experienced a bitter failure. They are like clowns standing alone beneath the spotlight. They believed they were popular, but when they pause and look around, they find that no one else has stayed to watch. When they are in trouble and find themselves unable to cope, they finally start to ask themselves where they went wrong. On the other hand, people who did not forget others when they were doing well and continued to sow the seeds of love will find that when they are in trouble, someone will appear to offer advice and rescue them. There are no expectations to this. There are no exceptions to this. Someone with a loving heart who shows interest in others gives hope to many and at the same time develops integrity. If things turn bad, this integrity will have the effect of summoning others to offer help in that person's time of need. This is always the case, so please never forget this. People who are easily carried away with their own success should be particularly careful. Watch that you do not lose control or become too easily satisfied by simple success. Number 11. Aim for a goal one step higher. Another type I would like to discuss here is the people who have achieved 80% of a success, suddenly lose their way and end up failing. It is as if they have climbed 80% of a high mountain and see the summit close at hand, then slip and fall. I am sure they will strike a chord in many of you who are reading this book. Have you ever experienced anything like this? You had a little further to go before you would have achieved success, but then something happened that brought your dreams to nothing. If you do not learn how to overcome this tendency, you will never achieve real success. People who find they are capable of reaching a certain point only to discover that success eludes them often have a subconscious fear of achievement. I would like these people to contemplate deeply. When faced with the prospect of success, they become scared and begin to sow the seeds of their own downfall. They do this because they are terrified of total success. They feel that they have not earned it and they become anxious. As a result, they always do something that causes some success to slip through their fingers. When they have only a little further to go, things come to a crunch and something happens to dash their dreams. However, the problem lies in their will to succeed. They themselves are scared of achieving a 100% success. People may wish their spouse to succeed in a company and earn more. They may want their spouse to become an executive, but this would make them an executive's partner. This scares them so much that they do something to ruin their partner's reputation. For instance, they may do something that causes rumors to spread. They feel that if their spouse were to become important, they themselves would not get on so well. Things would become more difficult for them. As a result, they unconsciously do something to stop their partner from getting ahead. This is quite a common occurrence. The cause of this, in fact, that they have not enough experience of real success. People who have never experienced success become scared when they realize that they might become very successful. They worry about what would happen if they were to fail and try to escape. When they find things in this kind of situation, they should tell themselves that the mountain they are facing at that moment is not Mount Fuji. It is merely one of the foothills leading to another high mountain. They have only reached a rest area in the mountain pass. People like this always get into trouble when they think they can see their goal. So as they approach it, they need to set their sights on a goal that is even higher. It is important to make a habit of always thinking one step ahead, always having some further goal in sight. They must tell themselves that there is always a higher mountain waiting to be tackled. Those who are able to do this will find they never fail. They may suffer minor setbacks, but in the long run, they will succeed. To go back to the example of exams, there are those who are so relieved when they have finished an exam that they rush out to let off steam, without worrying whether or not they have passed. This kind of person will often be confronted by failure. On the other hand, there are those who as soon as have finished, settle straight back into studies to prepare themselves for the next test. This type of a person does not easily find themselves in trouble, whereas the ones who are filled with exuberance as soon as exam is over will will find their lives a succession of ups and downs. So, when you have achieved something, I want you always to set your next goal, to brace yourself and consider how to go about steadily attaining it. Number 12. Think flexibly and turn difficulties to your own advantage. Another point I would like to make about invincible thinking is that, in many ways, this philosophy is similar to the principles of judo. It is not sufficient to use only your own power to force your opponent to the ground. As I explained with the example of bamboo, you should make the use of troubles and difficulties, turn them to your own advantage, and produce something positive from them. This is what I meant by invincible thinking. Alone, you can only achieve a little, but if you turn some of the external forces to your advantage, you can create something much better. This is very important, so I hope you do not misunderstand this point. Like judo, invincible thinking allows you to utilize your opponent's strength against him. When you simply beset by problems and difficulties, it is not sufficient simply to endure them. You must utilize your opponent's strength to come out on top. Be flexible and think of ways to turn the situation to your advantage. If you are always thinking like this, you will find that things are constantly getting better. Always be ready to make your next move. Ask yourself what problem that you are now facing is, and once you have identified it, work out how to get around it. If you stay several steps ahead, you will find that the outcome will always be positive. Number 13. Towards a life of daily success. In the starting point of happiness, I have written about the snowball effect, which is the same idea I am talking about here. If something turns out to your advantage, of course, you should make use of it. But even if it does not, you should reflect upon it, learn a lesson, use it to plant the seeds of greater progress. Whatever happens, use it to build your own store of experiences like a snowball. If you do, you will find not only your life will be more enjoyable, but you will also be able to move from victory to victory. At the moment, you are looking at life from a viewpoint that differs from positive thinking, but ultimately the result is same. Positive thinking states that there is essentially no such thing as worry and no such thing as evil, and this perspective leads to the monism of light, the idea that only light exists. However, if you understand that the purpose of life in the phenomenal world is to find a brilliant light in all your experiences, nothing but success remains each day. The final result is exactly the same as the result of positive thinking. If positive thinking is taken to mean you can instantly attain a high level of awareness, although this philosophy may allow you to get ahead, your growth will be only superficial. When you are faced with various ordeals on a daily basis, it is important that you use this to build up the muscle of your soul and add to its true strength. If you succeed in doing this, you will actually find that you have developed quite a strong, unshakable mind. One aspect of invincible thinking is that the unshakable mind is greatly fortified. It is impervious to hardships. When you are confronted by problems, it will take them in and convert them into nourishment for the soul. When you practice invincible thinking, it is as if you are looking around, ready to face any troubles or difficulties, and as soon as something happens, you absorb it and convert it into your strength. This philosophy is very powerful and it is manifestation of unshakable mind. If someone compliments you, express your appreciation and tell yourself that it is because you had the help of numerous people that you were able to do well. Do not think of achievement as your own, but remain humble, thinking of success as being the result of the help of God and numerous other people. The more you achieve, the more humble you should be. On the other hand, when you are faced with hardships, think of it as nourishment to help you grow and bear fruit. If you think in this way, you need not fear any adversity. When difficulty comes, you can accept it willingly as a time when you can learn lessons. Accepting adversity in this way, you will gain strength to allow your soul to grow and give out a new light. When adversity comes, for instance, if you are demoted, take a drop in salary, or you are working for a company that goes bankrupt, you will become introspective. So use this time for your fullest advantage. In other words, at a time like this, when you become contemplative and reflective, you should take this opportunity to temper your soul. When things finally get better, then you can make an effort to move in a positive direction and produce results. Another way of putting this would be to say that you should make use of both the philosophy of self-reflection of Buddha and philosophy of positivity of Hermes. When things are going badly, focus on self-reflection as taught by Shakyamuni, Buddha, and when things are going well, aim to achieve further progress and development as taught by Hermes. The teaching of the Institute for Research in Happiness includes both ideas, self-reflection and progress, and you can always succeed by using both effectively. Aim to grow and develop every year. After suffering through adversity, it is not enough to practice self-reflection and manage to allow the plus and minus to cancel each other out. Instead, face the storms that approach and take their strength for yourself. Do not be satisfied merely to weather a storm until it dies down. Then come up the same as you were before. Rather, absorb all of what you have experienced while confronting difficulties and transform it into energy within you. If you look back at the way you were 1 year, 2 years, 3 years ago, you must be able to say that you have definitely come a long way and that you have grown in stature. I would like you sometimes to check that this is true for you. If you continually grow like bamboo, you are achieving success in your life on a daily basis. I would like to finish this book with the following advice. Make use of both the philosophies of self-reflection and progress to make yourself invincible. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening this audiobook with me. This was the first audiobook that I had read. There may be some mistakes, I'm sure. Please excuse me for that. Thank you.